Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome to a little video. Today we're going to talk about views, and I found it very hard to do the views in code myself because describing how the view hierarchy and the view system works in Android is very complicated. So unlike other platforms like iOS where you just set make this 30 points wide, 20 points high, 30 points from the top, and iOS just puts the frame there. Android has to do a lot of measuring and computation to figure out where the frame should go. So anyway, the first thing we're going to talk about is when do views actually appear in Android, and this is very important to make your app seem responsive. So how do views tie into the lifecycle? So as we know, the activity lifecycle, or the fragment lifecycle, goes create, resume, resume, pause, stop, and destroy. And you know all this already. And if a dialog box pops up, it goes like so. So as you can see, the life cycle flows down along. Stop start, that is on restart, which is never used. And then destroy is when the activity is destroyed. So you all already know this stuff, basic Android stuff. At what point here are the views actually drawn? A lot of people get confused because in the onCreate in particular, you have set content view. So a lot of people get confused thinking set content view means the view is now visible to the user. That's not the case. The actual place where the views become visible is somewhere in between on resume and on pause. First time the activity loads. This varies a lot when the actual UI appears. So in order for an activity to actually start, to show an animation, to show a view showing up, you have to get through create, start and resume very quickly. And as you know, the rules of Android dictate that if you put something stupid in onCreate, like a DB call, that takes 50 milliseconds or even 100 milliseconds. You put start has a complicated loop on the data from that. That's another 10 milliseconds and another 30 on resume for some mad reason because you're writing the file to a disk. You've now got 180 milliseconds. That's a perceivable delay. In fact, anything over 20 milliseconds, in my opinion, is a perceivable delay because that's more than a frame. So these here, ideally you need to complete all of these within 30 milliseconds. It's not a lot of time in order to make an activity seem responsive. So obviously basic tips, use loaders and threads. For loading data from a DB, use a loader because then the loader goes off. And then the loader comes back through the callbacks. At some point, it could be injected in anywhere. Then what you do is you just shove your data from your loader into your views, and your views are prepared. And that's all it takes. So this goes into your views. So let's actually talk about how the views work. Android views are go through 3 steps, or basic views go through 3 steps. They have their own life cycle, in a way. They have measure, layout, and draw. So if you've come from iPhone, there's only draw. The views only draw, that's it. Android is a little bit different. So the 3 steps here are necessary because of all the different screen sizes, and we have things like match parent, weight, relativity, relative layouts, all this crazy stuff we can use. They have to position their child views in order to make them work. So in Android, the measure pass occurs, and these passes occur somewhere in this question mark here. They're somewhere between pause, resume and pause. You don't know when it's going to happen. So the way it works is you use a view tree observer, and we'll show you that in a minute. You can figure out at what point the view hierarchy is at and get callbacks for that. But all we know is that these views draw, these 3 things will happen to our view. And that's where the views draw. We don't know when it draws. There's no view did appear or view has loaded, because we just don't know at that point. So you have to figure out or listen for the events. So that's the basic thing. Basically this video, guys. How views tie into lifecycle. Make your lifecycle go to onResume as quick as humanly possible. Don't have extraneous things in there. Don't do processing. If you have to do heavy loading, please put it on a separate thread. or in a pool or in a worker pool or something. And that's half the battle right there, guys. So anyway guys, in the next video we'll talk in detail how these measure, layout and draw actually occur on paper. Then we're going to move on to the code and we'll actually be able to see how these work in practice.